5 books and counting. The Tales from the Omni Vault continues to expand as a universe. Go ahead and check the links down in the description to get your copies today. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I am the Omni Viewer. I'm just here to give a quick rundown on the Playmates Godzilla Kong the New Empire figures. Just the few that I've gotten. Don't worry, there are no spoilers in here. Nothing you're going to see in this video is something that hasn't been revealed by the trailers. I just really want to take a look and see if Playmates has done any improvements on their figures since the Godzilla vs. Kong line, or if they've slid backwards, or if they've just sort of remained the same. So obviously we have the two new figures here, but first, a little reminder on what the old figures were like. Obviously, there were different versions of Godzilla, as well as Kong, but, basically the only real difference is that one version of Kong had his mouth closed, while this one has his mouth open. The Godzilla's, the only real difference is that, well, there's the color. One is light gray, one is almost black, and the regular gray one has highlighted but opaque spines, whereas this one has blue and translucent spines. And this one, of course, is the one that came with a heat ray, which had the sort of flamey look to it, and fit in because there's a little hole in the top of the jaw that this bulb fits into. And it could go like that. And, nice effect and all, but it's not exactly secure in there, as you can see. And the level of detail was fine, all things considered, because, they are action figures. They're not necessarily meant to be adult collectibles on the same level as Monster Arts or Hiya Toys or something. When they did a Godzilla 2014, that level of detail remained more or less the same, with the note that obviously they added a bunch of highlights, and he was sculpted in a very particular pose. One that makes me wonder if perhaps this one, at least, was intended for display. Because, you're only going to get so many different things out of him like this. And then, of course, even though it didn't come with either Godzilla or Kong, there were the Heave vehicles, which were introduced there, and they looked fine when viewed from the sides or the top. On the bottom, they were hollow. Probably a cost-cutting measure. When I did my initial reviews, I did say that there were ways you could work with this, set them on a stand, put in a magnet or something. But even with that in mind, obviously this was done just to be cheap. So, we know how these figures look. What about the new ones? Obviously we have the evolved Godzilla, and we have Kong with what apparently is called the Beast Glove now. So, for the most part, there are similarities in that it's the same basic level of articulation. Arms and legs move up and down or back and forth for Godzilla, jaw can open, tail's on a ball joint so it can swivel around a little. And for Kong, same levels of articulation where he's got wider range of movement with his arms and elbows and his legs. Although an additional thing has been done where his head is also on a bit of a swivel joint, as you can see. Doesn't allow for that much movement, but what it does allow for does let him look in slightly different directions. And of course you can see also Godzilla's got the translucent spines here. But overall, I'd say, in terms of detail, Godzilla's pretty much on the same level as the original figures. Maybe slightly different, but overall, I think you can see level of texturing isn't that drastic of a departure anyway. One place where there is an improvement, however, is with the new heat ray, which is, of course, a new design, as you can see, but it actually inserts into the mouth differently. Instead of having a little bulb that fits into a socket, there's a peg here, you can see, and that fits into a slot in the mouth. There's even a little blast effect that goes on the outside of his jaw, so that once it's in, if you'll just give me a second, actually get it in there. As you can see, it's far more secure in there for starters, and it also looks more like, you remember with, my apologies for that, you remember with the first Godzilla, you stick it in like that, the beam angles down. So that's just the way it's going to be. Maybe you can adjust Godzilla's jaw to have it up a little, but it's still angled down. For Godzilla Evolved, the beam's almost exactly perpendicular to the ground. It's more up and forward. So it adds more to make it look like Godzilla really is targeting something right in front of him, which is a nice touch. As for Kong, the level of detail is, well, the articulation is, as mentioned, pretty much the same, but the detail is a huge improvement. Again, here's the original Kong. You'll notice that, yeah, there's texturing on the fur, but it's very slight, very fine. Here, though, on the new figure, much more textured, much greater detail. So they really stepped up their game with that. Even the head, like you put them side by side, the head of the new Kong looks much, much better than the head of the old Kong. And even the new heave vehicle here, you can see they don't exactly have much in the way of paint. It's a solid silver thing, but it's a solid piece. It's not hollow on the bottom. So yeah, that I would say that's a small detail, but still vastly different from the original that was hollow. So the 6-inch figures do appear to have overall improved. The only place where I would say things took a weird step backward is that the bottoms of the feet, as you can see, both Godzilla and Kong, they're kind of hollowed out here. Why? Beats me, but otherwise they look much better in a general sense. It's a small step forward, but a step all the same. So now that leaves the question, what about the bigger figures? Okay, so again, just a brief reminder of what the original giant figures that Playmates did looked like. This is Godzilla, this is Kong, obviously, and again, pretty basic. Arms move up and down. You had some movement in the wrists for both of them, actually. Legs can move back and forth. Godzilla's tail was on a slot, so you can turn it from side to side, but you can't really do anything else with it. And the head, of course, was a solid piece of rubber. Can't move any of that at all. It was the most detailed part of this thing, the rest of which texture seems to vary. And Kong, you can turn his head like this, but that's about it. Kong, in fact, like, I was kind of expecting way more movement out of him, but oh well. So, also worth noting was how, when you turn him either Kong to the back or Godzilla to the other side, massive glaring screw holes with nothing to cover them. Fine for Kong, I guess, because he's going to be facing forward most of the time, but Godzilla having the entire left side like that, really irritating. Especially since on the Mega figures, they did find ways to plug these things up, and even though the paint job wasn't 100% consistent, it at least kept the mold from breaking and didn't have these giant shining screws visible. So, there was definitely room for improvement here. Did Playmates improve? Well, here are the new Godzilla and Kong figures. Now, Godzilla's articulation is more or less the same. Arms move up and down, legs back and forward. The feet can turn, but that's kind of pointless. But are there improvements? Well, first of all, I should note, you can't turn the hands on this guy, but the tail is on a swivel joint as well. So it doesn't just turn like this, you can angle it up and down. Vast improvement. And, most surprising, jaw articulation. a minor thing, but the jaw is on a hinge, so you can open or close the mouth, and that does count for something. Again, we have the translucent spikes, but, you know, I think that's just going to be the standard for this one. So Godzilla's mildly improved. Kong, meanwhile, vast improvement. It really is like they took the 6-inch figure and just scaled him up. Because, again, you have the improved arm movement. It doesn't just move up and down. Same with the legs. They can go side to side. The right arm doesn't have rotation at the elbow like the left arm does. Maybe that's because of the machinery in the Beast Glove. I mean, I don't see why it couldn't turn, especially since, again, it could turn on the 6-inch figure. But, I don't know, maybe it was a deliberate choice. And head is also on a swivel joint here as well. So you can move the head around in different ways. And it actually, being bigger, has a slightly wider range of movement than the 6-inch figure. Only slightly, but, you know, it's still something. I mean, these are where they really improved. Even the Scar King, and again, don't worry, you've seen him in the trailers, he also has those similar kinds of movement. And an extra joint in the torso allows him to swivel like that. That's actually not bad at all. Now, all they really have to have done is to cover up the screw holes on the left side or the back, and we're golden, right? Dang it, Playmates. Am I asking too much? I mean, having some plugs to fill in these holes, that's not an unreasonable request, is it? I don't think it is, but then again, I'm not running a toy company, so I don't know. What I do know, though, is that, well, improvement is improvement. And I cannot deny that while there are still some weird things with the big figures, overall, these figures have greatly improved over what came before. They're still obviously action figures, that's their primary function, so they're not going to be hyper detailed. But still, I mean, I have to give credit where credit is due. Sure, Playmates could do better, but then again, Playmates isn't SH Monster Arts, it's not X+, it's not even Bandai doing the Movie Monster series. So, I will acknowledge that, especially considering how much less expensive these are than stuff you would have to import from Japan, you know, you could do worse. I'm not regretting these purchases anyway, so yeah, I would say at the very least the 6-inch figures are still definitely worth getting. The giant figures, I mean, still have the screw hole issue, but they still look okay. So with the right display, who knows? Anyway, just wanted to drop in and let all you guys know about that. Until such time as we meet again, this is the Omni Viewer signing off. Thank you all for watching. Now be sure to head down to the description to check us out on other platforms, as well as find links to the 5 current books in the Tales from the Omni Vault universe. Again, thank you all, and we'll see you next time.